the Watchers of Atlantis. So the mythical Watchers of ancient times have many, many stories and myths about them. The stories you're about to hear are all a result of the various dream regressions I have had. The Watchers were started during the first era under a ruler called Uran, who was very much against any interference by the Watchers, or anyone else for that matter, in the activities of the primitive human groups of that time. The ruler that followed Uran, Belach of Kron, continued with Watchers, but they were not as active. Hence, I don't really discuss that era terribly much when it comes to Watchers. The third era, however, became very prominent again. But this time, there was no law against interference. We would send out expeditions to study the various primitive tribes around the world. It is from the time when Uran ruled. This is an important point because the rules were different between the eras in Atlantis. We were warned ad nauseum about not exposing ourselves inappropriately to the primitives. If they had to see us or talk to us, we would be wearing the attire of another nearby human group. Otherwise, they would realize why they did not recognize us. Anyway, the reason for all the warnings was because one group returned that nearly lost a member of the expedition. It was dangerous to be around primitives, since one of their party was captured by the nomadic primitives. It all happened because the group they were watching had planned to kill a baby goat. It was an exceptionally cute goat, and the team had watched it be born and had watched it be cared for. To us Atlanteans, it was just adorable. Anyway, although we had been taught not to interfere, it was just so painful for us. And one of us thought they could just sneak into the camp and grab the goat. They didn't tell anyone they were going, since this definitely was not permitted. So that person was Ka. When the team realized that Ka was missing, we watched what was happening in the primitive camp and saw her sitting with them with the small goat on her knee. She told them in their language that she had chosen the goat and they must let her leave. She thought they might understand that. They were very suspicious of this strange person in very strange attire. Not incognito at all, because it was all done in rather a hurry. They surrounded her and were asking her many questions that Ka was not supposed to answer. Are you a god? No. Are you a person from another tribe? No. Do you bleed? Yes. And then someone poked her with a sharp stick. She bled. They all stared. So another one poked her, and then another, and it was starting to look fairly bleak for her. At this point, pardon the pun, the team had to figure out a distraction in order for an escape to be possible, and we didn't have much time. So we made a very big noise and set a dead tree on fire that was near the camp. People started pointing and yelling, and so everyone went to see what had happened. Of course, this gave Ka the opportunity to escape and get back to us. But even though she was rather badly injured, the funny thing is that she was sufficiently compos-mentis that the little goat came to, hiding under her cape. Her and the goat have been virtually inseparable ever since. The baby goat grew into a rather impressive but beautifully natured ram called Nim. Anyway, I deviate with that story. Back to my dream. So my dream was of us finding and building a base for another expedition to make it easy for us to see what the primitives were doing. In my dream, it was not my first expedition, but I do not remember much of the others. Sometimes I only get a glimpse in a dream, and other times I get something more complete. But in this dream, it was quite complete. We had to choose a place that the primitives could not access from the ground. We found a natural rock formation, a bit like Ayers Rock or Uluru in Australia, but it had a much steeper cliff-like side. It was about 10 stories high, a limestone extrusion. I think that's what they call them, extrusions. The first thing we did was to flatten the top, except for one large rock-cut building that we made, which was in the center. And we kept the primitives away from the work we were doing, from the ground area, so they couldn't see what we were up to while we were working, by using a sound barrier. Once we had our base set up, we were in a great position to watch them. So we made sure we had planted some food-producing trees and some plants, and we put this all around this big mound rock thing. We also provided an easy water source, and as expected, they came. They camped nearby and found the area highly conducive to relaxing and staying put for a while. Their language was very similar to one we had already studied, so adapting to the new dialect was fairly easy. When the group left, some of our group dressed like them, and we took over the place that they had just vacated. The objective initially was to be like them, to try and live like they lived, to replicate what we had just seen, except, of course, animal killings. But another tribe passed by, so we had to improvise. We invited them to join us. We treated them with great hospitality, and they accepted. They seemed very friendly towards us. Their dialect and the one we had adopted were compatible for communication. They did have some suspicion of us and asked us where our old people were and where are all the children. Of course, we did not have children and we did not have old people, and we really didn't know what to say. So one of us mentioned clumsily that we had just left our main group, which in essence was in fact quite true. That night we made up our beds to look like we were sleeping in our tents, and we returned to our lookout. Good thing we did, because during the night our visitors crept into our tents and attempted to murder every one of us. Considering how friendly they'd been to our faces, it was extremely chilling to watch. Our interactions from then on were only once Uran had developed a way that prevented any attack on us, which did improve over time. Anyway, these were things that we didn't need when we were back in Tantal or Atlantis, just for when we were let's say out in the field.